Did you know? School Sport Victoria offers 650,000 sporting opportunities in 31 different sports at 10,700 events across the state every single year. That's a lot of kids playing sport. And for over 25 years, the Victorian School Sports Awards have recognised more than 1,500 students, teachers and volunteers for excellence and outstanding contribution to school sport. Now that's a champion effort.
Show. We've got the Ask SSV show right now, and we've got Luke Mathews with us. How are you, Luke?
Hey, mate. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, man. Our pleasure. We love having you on. We are certainly excited by the interview today, but seems there's a lot of excited kids out there as well. We've got a whole bunch of questions that have come in, and like I said to you before the show, it's the first time we've had to knock people back and say, sorry, we're not going to be able to get to your question because we've had too many. So you've got quite the following, young man.
No, that's good. It's always refreshing to hear things like that. But I know it's a bit of an honour. So yeah, thanks, and I'm looking forward to this whole thing. So. Yeah.
Well, look, we've got some questions we want to get to now, but I want to talk about Luke just for a little bit. 2014 World Championships in Eugene, 2016 Olympics in Rio, 2017 World Championships again in London, 2018 Com Games, Gold Coast, we came away with a bronze, and 2019 World Championships. I'm not doing it justice because 2014 was World Junior Championships, and the first international, correct me if I'm wrong, as an open athlete was the Olympics in Rio. Is that correct?
Yeah, so first world team, and one of my first international trips was the 2014 World Juniors. Made a semi-final in the 800, also qualified in the 1500, but yeah, got picked and went for the 800. And then 2016 was less than 2 years later. So about a year and a half later, I qualified for the Olympics and made my first senior team. So qualified when I was 20, and I ran at the Olympics when I was 21. So pretty steep learning curve.
That's what I was about to say. It actually, you didn't have the luxury of having a few international championships and gaining that experience. It was actually a sink or swim, literally. You got in there and you did it amazing. Yeah,
it was pretty tough. I mean, I was pretty raw, and I was just a young kid in 2014. I was only 19 years old, and I was just fresh out of finishing high school. So it's weird to think that I kind of came away from 2014 pretty disappointed, because I kind of had some big goals and I didn't quite reach them. And when you're only 19, you're not really sure how to react to, I suppose, failure. And yeah, I was pretty disappointed. But if someone was to say that, in less than a year and a half's time I'll be qualifying for Olympics, I would have said that they were stupid or unrealistic. But that's pretty much what happened. And yeah, it was pretty weird to kind of throw myself in the deep end and have my first major championships at the Olympics. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have changed it for anything. And it was great to get one Olympics on the board, but hopefully have a couple more, or at least one more by the end of my career.
Well, you've already got 2 under your belt, and you've already got look, that's just pretty amazing. Now listen, looking at all your internationals, let's put aside the Australian Championships right now, because you've dominated that as well, but looking at all your internationals, which was the sweetest victory for you internationally?
Look, it's pretty, I think the one that stands out the most was definitely probably the Commonwealth Games in 2018, getting a medal and then also making the final of the 1500. So for me, it was a pretty successful championship. But look, to be honest with you, I think that there's a fair bit in it for the 2017 World Champs as well. I just freshly broken up with my coach, and I had about 10 days to prepare with no coach, no manager, and I was pretty ran into the ground and pretty defeated. So kind of, it's one of those simple things like defying the odds a little bit and winning my heat and just missing out on the final by 0.3. I think to go, I suppose, maybe not defying the odds, but kind of exceeding any of my expectations and anyone else's expectations, that was probably the sweetest. But I don't know, Commonwealth Games was one of those things where kind of preparation met opportunity, and it was just, came away with a medal, and it was happened to be in front of home crowd, friends, family, and everyone watching on Channel 7.
Which is so good, and obviously the home ground's good. But you mentioned something in our pre-show discussion, that medals don't really mean a great deal to you. You did mention the medal just then, but it kind of takes a back seat. It's really about, for you, the winning, the going against expectations, putting yourself out there, and it's not about the medal per se, is it?
No, look, to be honest with you, like stepping up on a podium and at the Nationals and getting the gold medal, put around your neck, or getting the bronze medal at the Com Games or whatever it might be. There's a fair bit in that, and it's a really special moment. But for me, it's more about trying to win. It's more about, I suppose, the title that comes with it, and it's more to me saying I'm the national champion as opposed to, say, getting a medal. So that's what's in it for me. I couldn't even tell you. The only medal that I actually know exactly where it is my Com Games medal, and fortunately it's not with me right now, it's at my parents' house. But yeah, I think it's more about the actual performance of the thing and the actual racing and trying to run as best as you can. And yeah, sometimes you're lucky enough to get Waterbury medals, but sometimes not getting a medal or whatever doesn't really reflect, kind of how a race went as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just a second, because you must have a haul of medals in terms of Australian Championships, and I want to show a very quick 2.5 minute video just to put in perspective what goes through a competition race for you, and also, the elation of winning as well. So here's a 2-minute video just to watch.
Spent some time in the US. It's a challenge. Ramsden, races all over the country this year. Last year, 2018 National Championships. And he's taken ASKSSV. Now Hanson moves up to the outside. Still bucks, they move towards the 800s. Corey Hunter, second. Matthews still leads the pace of this. And that looks like 4 points. It's coming around the outside, so he's decided to do it up around Victoria. Sort of the front now. Matthews still there on the rail. Answer the Tasmanian. Keep me honest, Ramsden put himself up the front early here. Ramsden on his shoulder, so 500 metres remains. This race starts again here. We've just got a lap to go.
Now, I love that celebration at the end, and I love watching your face there as well, because it must have all just came flooding back. That meant so much to you at that time. What was going through your mind?
So I don't know. It's always tough to watch back my celebrations. Sometimes they're a little bit cringy, so I'm not gonna shy away from that. But Yeah, that was D'Angelo Russell, who he's played for about 4 or 5 teams, and I think he plays for Minnesota at the moment. He just is. I did his celebration, so that's one topic. But yeah, that was pretty intense, just because that was the 2019 Australian Nationals. It was my first year. The previous 4 years, I'd ran the 800, and 3 of those I'd won. The one in 2015, I think I came about 5th or 6th. So yeah, that was the first year I'd ever tried the 1500, and my goal, and I suppose my goal, not ruling out the 800, but my goal going forward is to try compete in the 1500 internationally, because that's what I think I have the best chance in. And it was just really intense and really cutthroat, because I was competing against my 2 former training partners, and not to mention the next 12 blokes, or however many people were in the final. Were all really good runners. So yeah, pretty intense, pretty crazy. I also felt like I had a bit of a target on my back, because I was at the front of the race, and I never am super comfortable running from the front. I do like getting, obviously you want to get the lead in the last lap, the last 200 or whatever it might be, but I've never really had too many races where I've been leading the whole way. So I didn't really feel super comfortable being at the front. But then when Ramsden came around me with 450 to go, that's probably when I felt the most comfortable, and I felt like I was ready to go. So yeah, it was pretty crazy, pretty intense. I felt like that race was hyped up a fair bit leading up to Nationals. So I definitely felt the weight of pressure. And I think that there's a lot of people every now and then that kind of talk about maybe that I do a celebration, or I do, show a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy after a race. But I think that what people don't understand, or what definitely people don't see, is that, for the days leading up to the race, I have sleepless nights, or I'm playing out the race in my head. I'm dealing with nerves. The day of the race, I struggle to get down food. I struggle to even just get water in. So for me, it's before the race, it's the complete polar opposite of that. I'm really nervous. I've had to speak to sports psychologists and get my nerves in check. And then on the opposite side, you see the complete polar opposite, and that's me being enthusiastic. So that enthusiasm that you see after a race is compensated equally before the race, with me doubting myself and having a ton of different thoughts.
And I guess that's just a release. Listening to a number of your interviews and podcasts that you've done, you say something really interesting, that if you're not nervous before a race, then it doesn't mean much to you. And I know you're not talking on behalf of everyone, but for you, it's the nervousness is where the drive and the passion and all that comes from. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that nerves are a normal thing, and they can also be used as a positive, because it shows, one, that you have a connection to it. And I think that nervousness and emotional energy can actually boost you forward, and actually have a fair bit of advantage for when you're racing. So I think there's definitely been times in the past where maybe I've taken things for granted, and maybe I haven't quite given my full, and that's probably because I haven't been nervous and I haven't taken it seriously before the race. So yeah, I think now, instead of the difference is that now that, because I've spoken with some professionals and stuff like that, instead of trying to get scared by the nerves and that kind of energy before races, you just have to bring it in and use it to your advantage. So yeah, I think for me, nerves just means that I really care and I'm enthusiastic about it. So I think that anyone that's nervous before a race, it's completely normal and completely natural. And instead of trying to push them away and suppress them, you should try to bring them in and use them to your advantage as best as possible.
Look, we'll get to we've got lots of questions coming in. So we've got some questions that have come in from here, and I'll read this for you. It might be a bit small for you, but Riley Soderlund from Berwick Fields Primary School, I think Berwick Fields has sent out a group email, but I ran cross country last year with my athletics club. The last big race that I did was state cross country. My question for you is, what age did you start running in competitions?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, to be honest with you, I have an older brother who's 6 years older than me, and an older sister who's 4 years older than me. So my parents have always gotten us relatively and pretty involved in sport since we were a young kid. So for me personally, I kind of followed them down for little athletics when I was 5, 6 years old, and I think there still is maybe under 6s and stuff like that. So under sixes, I was going to little athletics most weekends, just as the same as I was doing Auskick or anything like that. So that's, yeah, I mean, competitions, I suppose, yeah, then. But, yeah, I started doing state championships, and I think you can start to, yeah, so your first national team you can make is when you're in year 4. I started competing underage as like a bottom age when I was in year 3. So I remember competing against the year 4 kids when I was in year 3. So that was I threw myself in the deep end there as well. So yeah, and then started making school national teams and stuff like that, year 4, year 5, and then started competing internationally when I was 18 or 19. So running in competition, yeah, I felt like it was thrown on me pretty early. Not that I was ever forced to do anything, but it's just what I was. I think that there was another part.
Oh. Looks like we have lost Luke Mathews, but hopefully we'll get him. He's back. Great. Sorry, mate. Here we go. Right, we just lost you there for a second, but keep going. Now, you talked about, starting at 10 years old. That's very young, like, to start, and pretty remarkable. You're a 25-year-old young man now. You've been able to stay in form and compete, and let's talk about it. You enjoy it as well, but for such a long time as well. What would you, knowing what you know now, going back to the 12-year-old Luke, what would you say to 12-year-old Luke now?
Well, look, to be honest with you, I think that when I was, 10 or even younger, or whatever it might have been, going down and doing little athletics and stuff like that was completely normal. I don't know, I don't speak to too many of my friends or family friends or cousins about what their 10-year-olds are doing or whatever it might be, but at the time, it was completely normal to go down to little athletics and, do little athletics training and do any type of training. So it was nothing out of the ordinary for me. At the same time, I was also playing football and training twice a week and playing a game every weekend. I was playing cricket, basketball, tennis. So, to be honest with you, to get involved in a sport when you're a young kid, I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary. So I think that, yeah, maybe the difference is that I've been able to compete at a high level. For a 10-year-old is competing at state champs and nationals and stuff like that. So competing at a high level, I suppose, the whole way through. I think the biggest thing is just, and what I'd say to myself as a 25-year-old to my 10-year-old self, is just to enjoy it. And that's what I did, because I always used to have all these people when I was a young kid saying, you have to enjoy it or whatever it might be. And I still stick by that, because if you don't enjoy anything you do, whether it's your job or any sport, or even if you're playing AFL football or, NBA basketball, you have to enjoy it. So I'd say the biggest thing is enjoy it, keep enjoying it, and just try learn everything and become a professional in it.
That is great advice, fantastic advice. We've got some other questions that have come in here, and I'll push this one across now. That is a little bit of a tricky one, but I'm sure you can answer it. What do you do if you weren't a sports person? What would you do? Like, if you weren't doing sport right now, what would you be doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's literally looking at me right now. So I went to St Kevin's, which is a private boys' school, and it's involved in like APS, and any school that's involved in the APS, it's education first, and then sport and social life, personal life second, I suppose. So for me, I was kind of thrown into an environment where you have to place an importance on the other aspects of life. So I learned pretty early that sport doesn't last. There might be a lucky few people like Usain Bolt or whatever, but for me personally, I learned pretty early that you have to go to university, and you have to realise that there's going to be a real life out there. So for myself, I'm two-thirds of the way through my uni degree. I've got about a year of subjects left. So I am studying finance and marketing. So I assume something in that field, but I'm not sure. Even though finance and banking and stuff like that, it's somewhat interesting to me, and it's not super interesting to, I suppose, everyone, but something in that field. But if I could somehow tackle my knowledge of athletics and knowledge of sport and make a business out of that, maybe it's in management or coaching or something like that, I'd love to do something like that. But But yeah, probably if I wasn't a sports person, do something that my degree could lead me onto. So I don't know, maybe investment banking or something like that would be pretty cool. Doesn't sound interesting at all I'm probably half the people here, but something like that.
But what's important is that you're thinking through what is it going to be like. Like you've got, let's face it, you've got a number of years left. I know you were being a little humble before by saying, I hope I've got one Olympics left. Let's face it, you know, I don't want to put pressure on you, but it'd take a miracle to not get you to the next Olympics, because you are in pretty good form and you have been in form for a long time. So you've got a few Olympics left, but at the end of the day, when you've finished competing, whatever it might be, you might run at Milers Club and all of that sort of stuff, but you've got to have the backing beyond sport just in case.
Yeah, look, I think that I think me personally, I think that it is good to have a backing. And look, at the end of the day, as harsh as this is that you're running against people who are you know, hungry for success and hungry for medals. And if they don't run well, then you know that there's nothing else in it for them. So when you're competing and you're training, you really have to be, you know, thriving for success. So I never want to say that it's if university right now was to take away from my running and training and stuff like that, I probably wouldn't be doing it. Running is just a good outlet at the moment that doesn't affect my training at all. So yeah, it's even though it is a I suppose a backup to an extent, and it's something that I can do in the future. My priority is to try run as fast as I can right now. So yeah, but it's still like I'd like to consider myself. I suppose to my friends and family and people around, I'm known as a runner, but I don't think that I want to have that label for the rest of my career. So you know, I'll try to be the best runner I can. Hopefully I can get some more medals. Hopefully I can be a dual, maybe a triple Olympian, whatever my, I don't know what the next 5 or so years where they're going to take me, but I do like to think that I wouldn't like to be labelled an athlete for the rest of my life. And I'd like to think that you can be a person outside of your sport as well.
Well, I mean, you've got a number of years left, like I said, and I think it's going to be pretty remarkable. We've got some more questions coming in. We've got one from Anthea Bindle. You've answered her first question, what advice would you give young athletes? But she's asked another question that I think is very valid. What nutritional advice would you give to primary age students?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'd say diet and nutrition is, I'd say it's probably sometimes been a bit of a flaw in my past. Sometimes I've eaten too unhealthily. There's also been times where I've under-eaten, and I've trialed different diets and stuff like that. To be honest with you, look, I think that as a kid, I think that your parents are going to have your best interests at heart. So, and I usually think that with how much information there is out there, your parents are just going to try to give you a nutritious diet and make sure that you've got enough energy, you're not overeating. So I'd just say, yeah, have a clean diet. I wouldn't say that, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't like splurge out every now and then and have a dessert or whatever, because you know you still have to enjoy life to an extent. So just have a healthy diet that's nutritious. Try to hit all the food groups like carbs, proteins, your fruit and veggies and stuff like that. But yeah, eating clean. And then I still, you know, for myself right now, I'm trying to eat clean Monday to Friday, and then Saturday and maybe part of Sunday, you know, have a little dessert here and there, and have a little bit of junk food. But look, I think if you're a young kid, just eat what your parents are giving you, and just make sure that you're fueling day to day, because your parents are going to have your best interest.
Very true, very true. Now, Zali Parker's asked a great question, and it's probably going to be a difficult one for you to answer, actually, because it's a kind of a cute question. How did you become so good at running, and do you love running? And there's another one coming that is going to be the tricky one. This one's a bit easy. So how did you become so good at running, and do you love running?
How did I become so good at running? Look, I'm not going to shy away from the fact that as a kid I was relatively talented. You know, I think it goes without saying that when you're 10, 11 years old, there's not too many people that are doing ridiculous sessions and stuff like that. So I was able to make teams when I was in year 4 and year 5 and stuff like that. So I was pretty talented, and I do understand that talent can only go a long way. But I'd say to kind of harness that talent and to turn it into something else was probably maybe more when I became 20, 21. And that was, I literally tried to change my life to try to become the best athlete possible. And I, tried to remove parts of my social life that I feel like were dragging me down. I tried to stop seeing people, stop having late nights. I changed to a coach that didn't accept anything less than, as cliche as it is, less than your best. I was with I was with a coach, and I'm with a coach now that, if you're in a race and you come second, and that you should win, that's just not good enough. So so I think to break that down simply is that I had a bit of natural talent, but talent can only get you so far. But to take that next step, which I don't think should maybe happen until you're later on, because I think you should enjoy it and just do things naturally for as long as you can. When I got to a point where I thought I could maybe become a professional athlete, I tried to change my life as best as possible. And it's, right now is that I train 3 hours a day or so. I'm in the gym numerous amounts a week. I'm doing things even when I'm not training. I'm trying to get as much sleep as possible. So it's really a lifestyle change. And do I love running? Yeah, look, I think that anyone that, I always try to say that running and athletics is a job, because it is a full-time job. And even if you have your dream job, whatever it might be, if you're if your job is eating and testing chocolate, which sounds like an amazing job, I'm certain that you're going to have bad days as well. So do I love running? Of course I do, but there's definitely times where I absolutely despise it. There's times where I think about not doing it. There's certain aspects of athletics which make me think that I don't want to do it. But at the end of the day, I do love running, and I do love the sport, and I still see myself having a career in it. So yes, I do love running.
That's a great answer, and I think basically you hit the nail on the head pretty well. And this sort of leads to this question here: how do you stay motivated during this challenging time with no race?
Yeah, well, look, to be honest with you, this little break and this little kind of pandemic is actually probably I don't want to say that having a pandemic and having something that's affected so many people be a positive thing, because it's not. I've got plenty of friends that have lost their jobs, and I've seen people that have been affected by it. But for me, myself personally, I was pretty injured at the start of the year. I had a tear in my foot. Right. I wasn't really able to run through January, February, and March until I finally got a diagnosis on my foot, and then I realised that I actually had an 8mm tear in my plantar fascia. So people might have had plantar fasciitis. So yeah, essentially for January, February, and March, I felt like I was running on a steak knife every step I was doing. So for me personally, it was this challenging time was actually a time for me to refresh, sit on my bum as best as could, and get my foot as healthy as possible. So me right now, I'm in the build-up phase. So I'm trying to get as strong and healthy as possible, because I wasn't able to train properly for 3, 4, 5 months or something like that. So having no races has probably been a good thing for me, because I haven't had anything to force myself back. But I would like to race in the next few months, and I think that maybe if I was to have that question asked to me maybe in November and there was no races, I'd have a completely different question. But at the same time, my training partner is Morgan Mitchell, and my other training partner is Sam McEntee, and they're 2 Rio Olympians, and they're really fit right now. So I feel for people like them who haven't been able to race and are ready to go right now. So challenging time for me. It's actually been a great refresh. But for people that are ready to go, I'm really thinking of them, because this would be an incredibly tough time.
Thank you, and thanks to that question from Alec and Eddie from Toowoomba Primary School. That's a great answer, Luke, because there's nothing wrong with what you've said. The fact is, you're right, it is tough on some people, but for you, the postponement of the Olympics actually has worked in your favour.
Yeah, there was an article written on Fox Sports. I think it was yesterday or the night before, and it pretty much I pretty much talked about the story and how 2020 has played out. And like I said, never want to talk positive about a thing that's affected so many people, but the postponement has pretty much put the athletics world on pause. And for me, if I'm being completely honest, I think that qualifying for Tokyo would have been incredibly tough. So for me, it's been great to refresh and actually get healthy. So yeah.
You must be super pumped about the fact that, well, let's hope it all goes ahead, but if it does go ahead, you must be super pumped about this next, 12 months and what it looks like for you.
Yeah, well, I think I've been running, I'm not back at a full load. I'm probably at about a 60 to 70% load with a lot of cross training. But, with how I've progressed in the last 3-4 weeks or so, and how my foot's feeling and how everything's going, I'm pretty optimistic with how things are going. And just speaking to my coach, I speak to my coach 3 or 4 times a day, just talking about plans and what we're going to do and, what races we're planning on doing. It's pretty exciting to think about the opportunities and possibilities that might happen in 2021.
Brilliant. Well, and we wish you all the best with your injury, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic for you seeing your name on the big screen. Now, Bart Leeton was going to join us from Scotch College, but he's on, but his camera's not on, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But anyway, he's asked this question. You've kind of, sorry.
I can see his name at the bottom, but he's not quite.
Yeah, his camera's off for some reason. But anyway, he's asked this question, and you've kind of touched on it. What other sports did you play as a junior, and how did they develop you as a runner? And then what age did you say, that's it, I'm focusing on running?
Well, firstly, I just want to introduce Bart a little bit. He, okay. Cheekily enough, become a friend of their family of late. And Bart, he kind of reminded me a little bit of myself, a relatively talented kid who was involved in little athletics and was always at every meet and stuff like that. And I met him at a couple of championships because he raced against a kid who my mum coaches at the state championships and stuff like that. And Bart, he still holding it against him. He broke my state record, which I was gutted about. And I'm just only kidding. But yeah, he broke my state record, my under 10 Victorian 1500 meter state record. And because of that, I've been lucky enough to become friends with Bart and the rest of his family. So just want to introduce Bart, and he's an incredibly good talent. So I think that if anyone here, they should keep the name out, Bart Leeton, because he'll most likely be a triple Olympian in the future, I'd say.
What a great, praiseworthy thing that you've done there. That's awesome, man. I mean, I think Bart is an awesome kid, but to get a shout out from Luke Mathews, that's pretty special.
Well, as a way of saying thanks, I actually gave him about 10 pieces of Olympic uniform. Not to say thanks, to say well done, sorry. I sent him a care package with about 10 pieces of Olympic gear. So if you see him wearing some Australian gear, that's all nice stuff from Rio. But yeah, sorry, I'll just get to the question now. I need to stop typing up Bart because you'll start to meet me in the next few years. But yeah, what sports do I do? I was a pretty active kid. I think my mum would probably say that she struggled to keep me sitting in the one spot at the time. So I played any sport imaginable. I was doing basketball, football, cricket. I'd always play inter-school sports, soccer. Played European handball when I was in St Kevin's. I think I even played some netball as well. So did everything. But the two sports that stuck it out the most to me were football, as in AFL football, and track and field. And I played both of them up until I was about 16 or 17. And then when I was about 16, I thought that my goal was to, become an AFL footballer. So I gave my run at that. And then I was literally on the footy field one day, and I would have been, start of year 11. And I said to myself, no, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. And pretty much that was it. So from when I was about 16 or 17 years old, I gave away footy, and then I've been with running ever since. And 2 years later, and then literally 2 years later from that, I made the World Juniors, and then 2 years after that, I made the Olympics. So I was an okay footballer. I'm not going to say that I was, a chance to make the AFL. Wasn't going to rule it out. And there's definitely been people that I've been better than that have made the AFL. And there's definitely worse. I'm not going to say that I was an AFL material, but I don't want to rule it out. Anything's possible. But yeah, I just thought that I'd be a better runner and than I could ever be footballer, and threw my eggs all into one basket and stuck with athletics. So yeah, I probably threw every sport away when I was about 16 or 17.
Brilliant, and that's a great answer there. And this is the question I was referring to before. How are you so good at getting to the Olympics? That's a cute little question from Adil from Berwick Fields Primary School.
Yeah, well, making the Olympics is not a simple or easy task. It's firstly it's every 4 years, and I think that even though you prepare, you still need to have a lot of luck. And so I'm just getting my charger quickly.
That's right.
You still need to have a lot of luck and good fortune go your way. So for me personally, how am I so good? Well, I had years and years and years of training under my belt. I have, done athletics since I was a young kid. When it got to about 2015, I kind of made a promise to myself that my goal was to make the Olympics, and I, as I said before, tried to change my life as best as possible to get to that opportunity. And in the summer of 2016, I was in Falls Creek for 2 months. I travelled all around Europe to make sure that I qualified, and I changed my life. And I was also lucky enough that I dealt with my injuries well. I didn't have to deal with any injuries. I was seeing physios once or twice a week, getting massage and stuff like that. So how am I so good? Yeah, like I said, it's obviously a little bit of natural talent, but it's also a lot of hard work and a lot of training and recovery when you're not training. So yeah.
That's exactly right. I love your answer there, because you talked a little bit before about when you were young, 10, 11, 12, that natural talent got you so far, but then you realised that actually you had to put in some hard work. So let's take us through what, obviously not now because you're not at full load, but when you are wanting to peak for the Olympics, what would a typical week look like for you?
So I'll just give you, say, Monday to Sunday. So my training's changed a little bit over the past. We've probably decided that it's going to be changed since January onwards. So, but say leading up to the Olympics and Com Games, Monday would be 2 runs, 60 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. Tuesday would be a really hard track session in the morning, and then followed directly by a gym session, and then an easy jog at night. Wednesday would be a 16-kilometre run, and I'm usually trying to get that one over hills to try to build a bit of strength and work your base endurance as best as possible. Thursday would be like a tempo or a fartlek or a longer type session, followed directly by gym and then an afternoon run. Friday is my easier day, so that's just time on the legs. Try to get out for 40, 50, 60 minutes, and then just chill for the rest of the day. Saturday would either be a hard hill session or a hard track session with an afternoon run at night, and then Sunday would be a 90 to 100 minute run, so about 24, 25k or something like that.
That sounds like a very jam-packed week.
Pretty crazy. So about 100. That's usually about 140, 150 k's in 7 days. So
that is amazing.
I joke about this with my friends, but I usually run more in a week than some of my friends drive.
I was about to say exactly the same thing. You are quite a remarkable young man to keep that level up and to continue to do that with the intensity that you do, because like I said, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and listened to you talk a lot on interviews, and there's one thing that can define Luke Mathews is you are very driven to actually drive the best out of you. You don't cut corners. There's no shortcuts for Luke Mathews, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, look, I'm definitely trying, but at the same time, there's still areas that I think I can improve on and be better in certain aspects. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to just make sure that I'm not, cutting corners and doing stuff like that. So that's why I'm hoping, 2020 would have been tough, but that's why I'm hoping Tokyo 2021 will hopefully be my best year ever. But time will tell, I suppose.
Well, we're going to champion that for you too. What do you do for fun? You've got a jam-packed week, but what does Luke Mathews like to do to relax and just let your hair down?
Well, at the moment, I'm staying home, and I'm,
that's because we're in Victoria.
Yeah, so I've recently moved into a lovely apartment with my girlfriend. So at the moment, downtime is either Netflix or uni. Unfortunately, I wish uni would go away, but need to get that done. But yeah, spare time. To be honest with you, I try to remove my social life away from athletics as much as possible. So yeah, I feel like I'm just any normal person. I've got a good group of mates. I hang out with them as best as possible. I just do what the normal Melburnian does on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, and hang out with my mates. I'm trying to read a little bit more. I'm trying to listen to podcasts more. I'm trying to expand myself a little bit better, but I really do struggle to sit in one spot at the same time. So weekends, I'm usually trying to get out and be with people as much as possible. But nothing, nothing out of the ordinary. When I'm not running, I feel like I'm just any normal 25-year-old, and that's what a normal 25-year-old does. Brilliant
stuff. We really love chatting to you, Luke, and we're rapt that you've come through so many Team Vic teams, and we're with you. I'm glad you beat me to it, but we're with you that your best year is yet to come. You've had some amazing years, but 2021 is going to be the year that you're going to look back on and go, that was phenomenal, and we're really championing you in that. We're going to continue to back you in that. And you're a good man. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, we've put your Instagram account details into the show notes, so someone might have a question for you in the future, but we'll rip this into a podcast in the next hour. Brilliant stuff, mate. You're a good man.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. I didn't get the name of everyone. Maybe I'll have to read them all back, but only question I remember was Bart. I'll appreciate all the questions, and I'd like to thank you guys and SSV for having me on.
No worries, mate. We'll put the questions back in the show notes as well, both in the podcast and on YouTube, so you'll be able to see who's asked them from what school as well. But good luck in the future, dude. Good luck with your injury, and we're really excited by what the next 12 months holds for Luke Mathews.
No worries. Thanks a lot for that, and really kind words. I appreciate it.
No worries, mate. You take care, and we'll see you in the very near future, I'm sure.
See you guys.